Also, to David's point about how tonight didn't change anything, you know what? If the president had done something really out of line tonight, it absolutely would have changed everything. People would be like, you see, it happened again, he has to leave tomorrow. So give some credit where credit is due.
Democrats' biggest problem is that they care about the tea leaves entirely too much. They care about the chatter entirely too much. They're perennial focus testers. So they literally are too cowardly to make a bold proclamation at a time when it is absolutely necessary. That is the major issue here. That like they can't get together behind a closed door and be like, dude, what are we doing here? Like, what the is going on? Are we really going to try to inch across the finish line? Like, what the are we doing? Every little flub, no matter how small of a gaffe it is going to be there. It's going to be a major issue, and it's going to only snowball.
To live under Donald Trump's reign again. I refuse to risk our democracy, and Joe Biden is the person right now who is able to defeat him. And so when people are saying, do something to prove that you have the command of the knowledge, and you stand up and you call on 10 reporters and you answer 19 questions for 59 minutes, then I ask you, if you go and say step down, then what is the test that he must prove over and over again?
Draw a clock.
Like you.
Draw a clock.
Was calling for him to
draw a clock.
Disingenuous.
Draw a clock.
Wrong, because that
woman, man, camera, TV.
And Joe Biden.
Woman, man, camera, TV.
People who are living with the fear of a possible dictator to take over this country.
Oh, it's so disingenuous. Like, if you really believe that a possible dictator is about to take over, you wouldn't be writing this hard, you careerist dickhead. Every single one of these careerist dipshits are just like, no, I want to keep my job. I want to get a new job. I want to work closely with the Brandon campaign. Yeah, no, draw a clock, ask him what year Beau Biden died, you know, things like that.
Days in my life. And I'm a little annoyed and I'm furious because I talked to black.
Oh God. And then they just like use the black people shield. Oh my God. Black people shield deployed. Oh, hello.
Time again. And black people are saying, let it go, folks. And
I don't, dude, this conversation makes me want to claw my eyeballs out. It's like, Joe Biden's not black. We got to stop acting like he is. What's going on here? Black people are the most important Democratic Party voting bloc. Yes, this is true. But across the board, like using black people as a shield to be like, no, we have to get this 800-year-old demon who literally said in an interview with a black broadcaster last week, he has so many blacks. He has the most blacks in his administration, more than every other president combined.
Joe Biden's numbers were not good going into that debate. They were, not good.
The idea that this is like what the black people want. The black people want Joe Biden is so stupid. Majority of black people also don't think that Joe Biden should be the candidate. The majority, okay? They poll black people. An overwhelming majority of black people think, time and time again throughout polls, that Joe Biden is too old to be president. That's number one. Number two, his replacement is black. His replacement is a black woman. So the idea that like, oh man, you got to listen to black voices, sweetie, doesn't work here. Joe Biden is not black. Kamala Harris is. They have one speed. Every goddamn Democratic flack has one speed, dude. Always and forever. This is the candidate that black people want. Yeah, black people want him really bad.
Donald Trump does present an existential threat to our democracy. So the real question is Joe Biden the strongest person at this point to beat him? The numbers suggest maybe not.
I do want to go now to one of the latest Democrats who today called on President Biden to step aside, Congressman Brad Schneider from Illinois. And Congressman, just when you listen to tonight's press conference, those questions that Biden took for an hour, did it change your mind on your decision today?
No, I think the president did a fine job. He showed a command of the issues, both domestic and foreign, showed a stark contrast to what we're dealing with former President Trump. But the fact is, and as was said earlier, we can't have a situation where every day we're holding our breath, whether it's a press conference, a debate, or a rally. And I think we're at a historic moment where the president can pass the torch to the next generation, not only unite the Democratic Party, but unite the country. And rather than slogging to a finish at the end of the election in November, we can run to the finish, win with a strong mandate, and continue this incredible experiment we've been working on for 248 years.
So what do you say to allies of the White House who watched that press conference, hear what you said just there, and say, their argument would be, okay, well, there's nothing he can do to appease the critics who want him to get out of this race, even if he demonstrates, one flub at the beginning of that press conference, but then also delivering complex answers to questions about foreign policy. What do you say to that?
Well, I think we've got to look at what people are saying. I was at 8 parades last week celebrating the 4th of July. I walked by probably 50,000 people. Not one said to me, we need to keep President Biden. My outreach to my office is running almost 30-1, saying we need to bring someone who can unite us and move us
Holy
forward.
shit.
It's not President Biden. And I talked to many of my colleagues. So
Holy
I love the
shit.
president. I think he's done a great job. I think he has
He said 30-1.
on a remarkable career, finishing as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had in our nation's
That
history.
ratio is
Passes the
devastating.
torch, and he does it successfully. He will go down as a historic figure in the pantheon of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or Franklin Roosevelt.
There was some new polling that came out today from the Washington Post and ABC. If you look at the breakdown and some of the numbers, there were more Hispanic voters, more white voters who were saying that they did believe President Biden should step aside in this race. But there was a majority, I believe it was close to 56% of black voters who were saying that they did believe he should stay in this race. What would you say to those voters or in South Carolina or in other areas who are saying, we do want him to stay in? We haven't called on him to step aside.
Yeah, what I would expect to say is if President Biden goes to the podium, talks about the future, talks about passing the torch, and successfully transfers the mantle and does it before the convention where we have a unified convention, I would go and share the love for the president and say he is a remarkable man who's done a remarkable job, and he's given us the greatest gift to move forward and win in November. And I think most people, whether it's South Carolina, Illinois, or anywhere in the country, would agree.
What was your reaction when you heard him talking about why, when he was asked by Asma Khalid of NPR about being a bridge to the next generation? That is what he promised when he ran in 2020. Right. She was asking about that, and he was saying it was because what's at stake here? Citing his experience essentially as a basis for staying in when it came to the economy, when it came to foreign policy, but also the stakes of democracy and what's at stake in this race. What was your reaction to that answer? Was that sufficient for you?
I thought it was a great question, and I was the first person in the Illinois delegation to endorse President Biden 4 years ago. I did so because I knew he would be a good president, and he has been a great president. That said, I think part of the role of being able to be that bridge, to pass the torch to a new generation, having created or helped create in the Democratic Party, not just a deep but a wide bench from Vice President Harris. We've got governors across the country who have demonstrated records of significant accomplishments in their states as executives. We've got people in the cabinet, people in the Senate, the House. We've got a bench, and he has, I believe, the opportunity to show the way and open the door to the next generation in a way no one else has since George Washington. And I hope he takes that chance and, again, unites not just the Democratic Party, but I think he'll unite the entire nation.
Congressman Brad Schneider.
There is some truth, with the exception of Israel, there is some truth to inflation halting and obviously greedflation being a big component here in terms of the cost of living being incredibly expensive. Biden's policy accomplishments, his legislative agenda, especially when you look at that performance and compare it to the normal performance of other administrations, that it is actually a relatively solid legacy. So when these guys come out and say, dude, you have this legacy, you have to step aside, you literally have to step aside, you're tarnishing your legacy, they're not wrong. But the problem is, it is that exact legacy and the 50 plus years of being in office and running for president unsuccessfully since the 80s, is perhaps the reason why he's like, what do you mean? I killed it. I'm killing it. Shut up, I'm doing it again. That is the major issue here. A lot of people are looking at the situation and going, dude, you're going to lose to Trump, and then no one is going to care about your legacy. You're going to cook the down ballot races, and there's, a very legitimate cause for concern here. But he's just like, no, it's my time. You remember when you guys said it was her time? Well, it's my time. Like, that's what it is. So it's just pure malignant narcissism. He is the old man who does not want, he's the elderly grandparent who does not want to give away the keys to the car. But it is obvious that he cannot drive the car any longer. Problem is, the car has a nuke attached to it. Okay. So if he truly recognizes how bad Donald Trump would be for NATO or all the things that he supposedly cares about, then he has to do the right thing and step aside. That's why in this very unique moment, you have the likes of people like myself who obviously find the Democratic Party to be abhorrent and feckless institutionalist cowards who can never meet the actual the actual devastating legislative agenda of the Republican Party that just wants can drive the entire planet into hell. You find those guys unironically agreeing with me. The people that care the most about unseating Donald Trump are not those who are the Biden dead enders right now. They are those who want Biden out so they can actually put a capable candidate, one who is not going to have his brain leak out of his ears every other week. Now, the issue is the Democrats are still very bad at doing politics. So because of that reason, I still fear that there's a long way to go, even if they were to unseat Brandon, even if they were to get him to, step aside quietly and with dignity to preserve what remains of his legacy. Because if they continue along with this narrative that like they are the NATO party, that is going to have dire consequences. That is going to have dire consequences for their re-election chances. They're not giving him the coherence edit anymore. President Biden said polling in the presidential race is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started. I mean, hadn't started in earnest yet most of the time at start till after September, after Labor Day. Yeah. They're not even like paraphrasing his statements so that it is like easier to understand. There are Nazi tweets at the top of your replies. Brother, it's Twitter. I wish I could deal with it. Welcome to how unimaginably reactionary Twitter has become. This shit is so symbolic for boomers, narcissistic, selfish demons clinging to power to the detriment of everyone else. Absolutely. That's why my resentment carries on to anyone over the age of 65. Just makes me so unimaginably and unreasonably angry whenever I see a selfish old person who just has that like I'm gonna live forever attitude. This like you, I'm gonna claw on to life just so I can keep living and voting for the absolute worst possible candidate I can. Hasan, wouldn't it be actually better for him if he dropped out and Trump won? He could then say, "Told you." I don't think he makes it to that point. If he drops out, if he doesn't drop out, I don't think he's seeing the next term. It is so wild that these past couple of years has had not one but two very significant Democratic Party that are identical to the Biden situation. Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Dianne Feinstein. Both were at the end of their lives. Both had a bunch of people that came out and said they should step aside because this is going to put their position in a really scary predicament. Republicans are going to take advantage of this. And they did. And Biden looked at all that and said, nah, I'm different. Representative Brad Schneider, who called on Biden to step aside, says on CNN that he did a fine job praising his command on the issues before adding, but the fact is we can't have a situation where every day we're holding our breath, whether it's a press conference or a rally. Nate Silver has fallen, by the way. Back in Washington, this is a CNN article that he's posting about. Back in Washington, there have been clear signs throughout his term of the president being increasingly stage managed. We already covered this article earlier, but it's basically talking about how he's just, every step that he takes is like micromanaged in an effort, and he's like increasingly more sheltered from not just like public eye, but also from literally his own staff and his own cabinet members. He says, this isn't normal or acceptable for an American president. It sounds like a story from an authoritarian country. If they want any real chance to get to the conservative party and roll in a Harris Newsom ticket, have Biden active in that campaign and ride it out with some dignity left. Yeah. The liberals on Twitter are just as bad as MAGA cultists. Yeah. Which is weird because I know that they're not like Biden or bust. That's a laughable notion. That's not a real thing. Every single time a liberal says, you guys are trying to fucking ruin and tarnish the legacy of our big, beautiful, bold president, ask them, if Biden stepped aside tomorrow, would you not vote for whoever replaces him? Doesn't even matter. Would you not vote for a wet napkin over Donald Trump? The answer is always going to be a resounding yes. So these guys are just chirping, but it's just irrelevant.
This is the place that the president is in.
And obviously it has made people look towards the Vice President Kamala Harris. And you saw President Biden got multiple questions about her tonight, about whether or not he believes she's qualified to take on the role of president. He said, obviously he did, given he picked her to be second in line for the presidency, first in line for the presidency. But what did you make of what he said tonight about her and her position and her numbers versus what you've been hearing about what her allies are doing behind the scenes?
Well, I think he was very gracious tonight, and I think he'll get credit for that. that. He said there's no question she could do the job. He didn't seem to be feeling any sort of threat from her. But I think the threat is very real. I think the threat is, we know it's on the Hill. We know it's within his inner circle. We know it's within his campaign team, real doubts about whether he can do this. And we know it's definitely in the donor community. And the donor community has sort of been coming alive in recent weeks. They've put together plans to start spending money on influencers, start spending money on TV ads, to start building up the vice president on the premise that either she's going to be the vice president and she's going to be in the spotlight in this campaign because he's so old, or she's going to be elevated to the nomination to be president, and they'll have to defend her reputation for that.
Yeah, well, she's been out defending him on the campaign trail. Great reporting from all three of you.
Yeah. Oh, here's another insane thing. The First Lady from Politico. The First Lady has expressed fear that bowing out would make the Atlanta debate a defining image of her husband's presidency, an outcome she finds unacceptable. This makes me so mad. First of all, that is the case regardless of whether she wants to wish that away or not. But secondly, who the do you think you are, bro? Who the absolute living do you think you are? Like, oh, it's unacceptable that like my husband's legacy will be tarnished by his like unimaginable of a debate. What the is this? This is some like straight England behavior, Crazy. I don't care about the personal feelings. I don't care about the personal feelings of stupid ass Democratic Party members.
Takeaway from this news conference
and like administration leaders. Like I don't care. Like what the are you talking about? And I don't think Americans care either. Why the does anybody care about like Biden's legacy?
President Biden in his opening remarks
and his personal
talk
feelings
about NATO in the context of what Donald Trump has said about President Putin and about the defense alliance more generally. He also put it into the context of other foreign policy challenges and really tried to make this about a contrast between his position and vision for a second term and what Donald Trump might do if he is to win back the White House. But overall, Tom, as you saw there, the president extremely defiant, saying, look, I'm going to stay in this race. I understand why people have certain concerns. He says that they are valid. He says that he understands. He even conceded that if his neurologist suggested that he should have another extensive examination like the one he did earlier this year, that he would do that, which is something that stood out as well, given all the questions about his age and his health right now.
Yeah, and we're going to have to wait and see how voters saw his stamina, how they saw his energy, how they saw his cadence, how they heard this speech. He did have one moment there towards the end of the news conference that you mentioned. I want to play for our viewers now in case they missed it. Basically asking what would happen.
Do you think Biden could still win at this point? Yes, I do. I do think so. His chances are diminishing every day, but of course, he still has a chance. Like, I don't think it's like, it's not 100% yet. No, that's not copium, guys. Come on. Come on. Oh, people are so ridiculous. That's not the point. The point is that it shouldn't even be a close race. Trump is unimaginably dog. Trump is bad. Trump is so bad. He is the worst possible Republican that you could run. So to look at that and go, let's run the worst possible Democrat is insane.
And where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing. And I don't know how many, don't hold me to it, roughly 20 major events, some with thousands of people showing up. And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just got to just pace myself a little more.
Monica, is that the case? Is the president hosting 20 events? Is that fair? Is it around there? Was he being truthful?
Look, I think he's trying to combine a couple of things here, Tom. He's talking about the fact that he did hit the campaign trail after the debate. He was traveling a little bit. Then he did do a handful of radio interviews. Then he was back and traveling again. And so he's taking all of those individual engagements and let's say maybe a stop at a restaurant
Sorensen
like
of
a
Illinois.
Waffle House, and probably counting that as one of those things.
Number
in
19.
addition to then giving a speech in a battleground state, in addition to then these engagements that he has had at NATO over the last couple of days. So if you add up all those things,
but not 20,
right?
But not 20 major campaign events. Yeah. I understand now. Since you mentioned the
hello, this is a proud communist socialist channel. I think this is a total laughable as every normal person thinks, but mods don't want to give me the pleasure of permabanning me. So look up the famous old Bezmenov's interviews. This is a runaway KGB agent. He will explain a lot to you, and those are scary. Thank you. Wish you everything you deserve. A permaban for me because I want to join those honorable people. Thank you again. I love that video because it's like the easiest way to root out dumb guys.
Biden campaign and from the White House.
I know exactly what video he's talking about.
Interview questions.
The dude with the goofy glasses.
And some of them were taken and essentially asked pretty verbatim. And so that's one development. And then in a separate development, also related to those radio interviews, Tom, we understand that the campaign asked them to edit out a portion of.
Yeah. Oh, dude, this is such a good lock. Bro's trying to get you to watch Boomer Yeonmi Park. Yeah, do not ban that guy. I love that guy. Yeah. Long before Yeonmi Park, which is the updated version because like that dude did not have titties on him. Let me tell you. Long before Yeonmi Park, there was that guy, the former KGB agent who reveals all the secrets about socialism to America.
Look, you know, if there wasn't the debate, right, if that had never happened, this would have been fine and somewhat perfunctory, right? It would have been sort of, frankly, what we've come to expect from these public performances by the president. Some slip-ups here.
Can you avert a second Trump presidency?
This
and there
is
is
Jim
not
Himes.
a single number out there, not one. You know, Cook report telling us that we may lose the House that says that Joe Biden is going to win. And so the answer to that, which is a fair answer, is that, yeah, but there's still time. There's 4 or 5 months to the election. So then you need to ask yourself, what's the trajectory look like here? Are things getting better? If you believe that the problem the Democrats have is that we haven't gotten our message across, the message of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the message of capping out-of-pocket expenses in Medicare at $2,000, at capping insulin.
Dude, he's going to say the same shit that everyone has been saying. Okay, listen. There are very few instances where I find myself almost wholeheartedly in agreement with mainstream media. When push comes to shove and people start recognizing the writing on the wall. COVID was one of them with respect to the vaccines especially, right? And obviously the contrarian public that already is understandably cynical about the way that the media presents the truth or whatever will then use this as a moment where they completely remove themselves from the equation. Now, a lot of right-wingers did this. Some liberals did this during COVID and then turned around and became right-wingers ultimately. And I feel like a lot of the blue anon people are doing the same thing right now, where they're just like, yeah, all these channels that I trusted until yesterday, like they all fucking suck because they are saying Biden is too old. What's their agenda?
The debate right before the election. Do you want to take that risk? I don't. Now, you know, I don't presume to understand the president's calculus.
Yeah.
But he's top 10 presidents, right? Why would you gamble that legacy? The legacy of being a top 10 American president, transformative. Lyndon B. Johnson, transformative. And you're going to gamble that on possibly being the guy that handed the country over.
Yeah, you're saying it's too risky.
That doesn't make sense.
Here's a good take from NBC News political analyst Stephen F. Hayes, who said the president opened his press conference by mistaking VP Harris for President Trump. He said he was going to follow the advice of the commander-in-chief, military chief of staff. He spoke about pacing himself and better managing his schedule to accommodate his challenges. He spoke gibberish about Ukraine's ability to strike into Russia. He said, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase, corporate rents for apartments and the like. Homes are limited to 5%, which I really liked, by the way. For the record, I don't know why he was shitting on that. Why are you reading biased propagandists? The editor and CEO of the Dispatch, NBC News political analyst? I mean, it doesn't matter. He's right. Extended non sequiturs and half thoughts on Japan. I like the 5% rent thing, by the way. Well, that rent part isn't true. They have not done that. Expect very, very selected ones. No, I know. I'm just saying that'd be pretty sick. So him shitting on that as a right winger, I don't give a about. I don't vibe with that. Anyway, extended non sequiturs and half thoughts on Japan and South Korea, and all this just 2 hours after you introduced Volodymyr Zelensky as Vladimir Putin. If we think that that's a good night because he had moments of coherence, even extended ones with substantive answers, we're not just grading on a curve, we're nuts. Explain why you like it. What? Capping corporate owned landlord rents is good. Like rent increases is good. People are saying 5% is insanely high. It is, except any kind of momentum beyond any kind of conversation about capping rent increases is literally federal rent control. You chatters are literally delusional. It's not going to happen. What are you talking about? And even the rent control in most places that exists right now the limited amount is usually like capped at way higher than 5%. What are you talking about? Are you 12? You're lucky if you get to 10% rent control cap. Most rent control in places are like kept at a 10%. Slashing that in half at the federal level is unheard of, and it's not gonna happen. And there's dumb motherfuckers in here being like, what do you mean, dude? What do you mean? Yeah, chatters think they live in Vienna. Yeah, they're like, dude, what are you talking about? 67% of our available housing is publicly owned. What do you mean? What the Y'all need to not be unburdened by what has been, or y'all need to be unburdened by what has been. That's right. I love that the one thing that Biden said in his like insanity was an unimaginably good policy that will never happen. And chatters are like, what do you mean, dude? Biden didn't say that they should execute all landlords and forcibly extract all of the remaining land that they owned and give it back to communes. Like, what the going on? Wow, he's not radical enough for me. Let me tell you something, okay? 5% federally mandated cap on rents is literally an unheard of policy by any American president. You are out of your mind. It is a game changer. Please.
And seemed to leave the door open to the possibility of stepping aside if he was shown evidence that Kamala Harris could beat Donald Trump and that there was evidence that he could not. He then dismissed that, saying that that's not going to happen here. But, you know, the president did speak for, what was it, roughly an hour, perhaps a little more than an hour tonight in this news conference. If this was an effort to try to demonstrate stamina, I think on that front, after a very long several days dealing with world leaders here at the NATO summit that he is the host of, I think he'll satisfy issues that may have related to the topic of stamina. But I do think, you know, beyond that, obviously, people are now going to see this in digested pieces. They're going to see it on the internet.
If he put out like an executive order or like started whipping for serious legislation, capping rent control at 5% at the federal level, which is laughable and he's never going to do that, I would probably vote for him. I might even door knock for the motherfucker. Let me tell you how serious I am. It is the #1 issue in the United States of America. It is the #1 issue in the United States of America. The cost of living is unimaginably high, made only worse by the fact that the overwhelming share of the cost of living increases is coming from housing. Making housing affordable with one quick sweep in terms of a legislative agenda that would immediately be declared unconstitutional, and Brandon would probably be executed by a fascist plot that ended up being successful. But having said that, if he actually attempted to do such a thing, I literally would reconsider my opinion.